Well, hello everybody. It's Professor Cox, and hey, let's see how this works. Hopefully you're able to view this okay, and here on the class website. If as always, if you have any questions, concerns, please shoot me an email right away at jgcox@salisbury.edu. Okay, so again, sorry I couldn't be here in person today. Had to run across the state of Virginia and do some reporting out there. So I appreciate you guys, you know, accepting me in a different format. Um, but I think this lecture, it's a good foundation, and I think it actually works well in this format because you can kind of block out the other any distractions. So go ahead if you haven't already, maybe you listen to this with some headphones and, try to get through here, in 20 minutes or so. So anyway, as you can see, we're discussing news values today. And, news values are kind of, you probably don't realize that they're there, but they're there in every news story that you see. So go ahead and click forward. Right, so news values are at that intersections where, journalists, you're either creating the news or reporting the news. Um, and I know that creating news sounds a little funny, it kind of sounds like we're making it up, but what that actually means, we call them enterprise stories. And enterprise stories, when you go out on your own and you have an idea for something and you write about it. So let's say you're curious about, for example, a story that I did earlier this year when I was with the Daily Times. I looked at the health inspections for the local school cafeterias in Wicomico County, and found out that they were being cited more often than commercial eateries, suggesting maybe there was some sort of lack of care going on there. And that was not a story that was, say, an event or came from a press release or was some, important thing that an important person said. That would be on the right-hand side that you're looking at right now, where we report the news. So two different things that we do. We create the news, we report the news. I think I got all this stuff here. Yeah, so news values answer that question. Why did this story make the paper? And we decide not only what news values to include, but in what order they should be in. Again, it's not really something as you write your 100th or 200th story that you go, okay, what order will I put these in? They just sort of become part of the fabric of your workflow. So don't get too freaked out about that. But it really helps to know what they are. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look at uh, each of these individually. Don't feel like you have to transcribe all these down right now, but we have several news values. I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. And we'll go through these individually, and yeah, so impact, timeliness, proximity, prominence, oddity, conflict, human interest, and helpfulness. I'm not sure that this is every single news value that there could possibly be, but this is a pretty darn good start anyway. And I didn't just come up with this. My wife didn't just come up with this. You see these in textbooks. So let's move on and kind of pick these apart. One thing I would like to say, though, before I jump into impact is that every story uh, has at least one uh, of those 8 news values, okay? Sometimes you could have more than one, but there's always going to be at least one. That's really what separates journalism from, an encyclopedia entry or something else, So don't feel like these are necessarily mutually exclusive or discrete, or you can only pick one. We'll talk about that coming up, but I do want to let you know right now that um, news stories can contain several of these. Sometimes it is just one, but usually it's more than that. So okay, that said, impact. What is that? Impact basically answers the question, how does this matter to readers? And it usually is expressed in a number of some sort. It's a size or an impact of occurrence. So let's look at that. Numbers show the impact. So here we got number right here. Look, I'm circling it. I'm proud of me. So no impact right here. A lot of people attended the event, okay? But if we look at this one here, more than 2,000 people attended the event. Now you're talking. So other ways you can express impact, usually you see a number, it's probably impact. The worst hailstorm in 20 years, okay? The biggest crowd ever sparked a national outrage. And you ask yourself, well, what's the impact here? National, okay? It's not a number, but it's expressing a size of something anyway. It's not local, it's not regional, it's not worldwide, but it is national, okay? So that sets the parameters of the conversation. Um, so recent impact magnitude stories, boy, what would be something, uh, whenever there's pick a sad example, if there's a mass shooting or something, how many people were shot, that really gives the magnitude of the shooting. And there's the word right in the kind of the phrase there that has magnitude or has that impact in it, which is mass, a mass shooting. Kind of distinguishes it from, I guess a garden variety shooting, if such a thing exists. So mass shooting has greater news value than perhaps, is this a garden variety shooting, if I use it's kind of an awful term there, but just simply because of that impact, that news value. Again, you probably didn't think, probably don't think in terms of that as a news consumer, but journalists do. And if you're in this class, you are now a journalist. Upward. Um, which of these conveys greater impact? A car crash killing 2 Salisbury residents, a car crash killing 2 Salisbury high school students. Well, they both have some impact there. But, this example, it's kind of like, the SATs anyway, where, not, maybe neither one is necessarily wrong. This one's just a little lighter, I guess. This guy right here. So, yeah. Why is that? Well, we have still the 2 in there, the number 2, but the impact, where we've set the uh, the scope of it a little bit more sharply here. It's not just 2 Salisbury residents that we had here. It's 2 Salisbury high school students. So yeah, both have impact, but this one gives you a clearer field of what you're talking about. Which one conveys greater impact here? We have Hurricane Harvey floods Houston, damages homes. Hurricane Harvey dumps 15 trillion gallons of rain on Houston, damage costs up to 100 billion. Yeah, obviously, we've got nice numbers in there, 15 trillion gallons, 100 billion. That's just rife with impact. So, yeah. Moving on, the second news value, not that these are presented in any particular order, is timeliness. And this is a big one because we talk in the news business about, well, what's the news peg? Well, the peg is when something is happening. Something that happened decades ago, and you write that up, it's kind of just a history story. That's why, when you see history stories are often tied to that magical word, an anniversary. You know, that's why you're seeing a lot of stories right now harkening back 50 years, 50 being a nice round number, to 1968, and the things that happened then with the assassinations of Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., and remembering other events from that year are pouring in. And so if you're wondering, wow, I wonder why 50, well, that's because they're able to kind of have a time peg with it being the 50th anniversary. And if not for that, it's really not much of a story. Next year it'll be 51 years ago, and that you know it's not that magical round number. You're probably less apt to hear about something that happened in that particular. We'll be talking about 1969 things. You'll be hearing about the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and 50th anniversary of Woodstock. Don't worry, all these things happened before my time too. So anyway, how does news competition online affect news decisions? Is the question that we have here. So in our little example here, these are pulled from the newspaper that I used to work at down in Jacksonville. And some of these things are only, kind of only news stories because of the timeliness aspect of them. Oh, it happened just moments ago. Home invasion investigation. Wow, okay. Boy, that just happened. As you can see there. Crime Watch, latest property crimes reported in Clay County. Boom, 135, okay. Better example is, traffic backed up on, the interstate. Boy, that's not a really big news story, in the print edition, because by the time you get that the next day, who cares, oh, that's why I was caught in traffic. Well, okay, we can bury that inside on page 10 or something, because that's not really big news. But maybe on the website, as it's happening, maybe that's something that you put up front and center. Tractor trailer overturns on the interstate, causing, miles long backups. That's something you probably want as a reader to find out now about rather than later. So, and you want to be able to see it. So that maybe is a little more front and center there. So yeah, time peg is something that I've been discussing, and yeah. So this doesn't refer as much to enterprise stories. I wouldn't say not. I'm gonna maybe part a little bit with Dr. Cox on this one and say that it's less of important value when it comes to enterprise stories. Like when I did that one about the cafeterias locally, like I didn't look back decades ago. I looked back in the most recent. Maybe I think I did 2 years worth of inspection reports. So yeah, I mean it went back 2 years, but it was the most recent 2 years, and it went up to the last couple of weeks before the story came out. So, I mean, timeliness was not maybe the first thing that I pointed out, maybe not the second or third, but, I made sure that I got across the point somewhere relatively high up that, look, I mean, these are recent reports. And so, can I erase that? Oh, cool. Yep, there you go. I erased it. So yeah, so timeliness does factor in a lot when you see like, event coverage. Hey, this is coming up. Havre de Grace Seafood Festival features Charlie Daniels, food, crafts. So that's coming up, right? In this hypothetical example. It's coming up this weekend. It's something you probably want to feature high up, when you're sitting there as a journalist, going, okay, my news values, what do I want to put in my first sentence? What can wait until the second sentence, or third and fourth, and so forth. Pep rally on Sunday before first day. The example we have here on the bottom. UA freshmen get advice. Show up. Oh, okay. Timeliness, very important there. Does that matter very much? Does this story matter very much? 2 weeks into the school year that there was a pep rally 2 weeks ago. It's not really news at that point. So, but it is news in the run up to it. Hey, there's this thing going on. You probably want to attend it. So which one best illustrates timeliness of these examples? Again, I think we single out the first one there, and it gets a smaller arrow. Congress passed its anti-crime bill on Wednesday. Okay, so let's assume it's Thursday and we're reading this. Okay, Wednesday. That's recent. Okay, that's news. Passed its anti-crime bill recently. That's kind of squishy. I don't really care so much about that. I mean, it happened recently, so there's a little time peg, but that's probably not something I want to highlight in the lead. If it's a feature story that I'm writing and I'm talking about efforts to combat crime, and I'm going to eventually mention this crime bill that passed recently, okay, somewhere in the 8th graph or something like that. If it passed 6 months ago or 2 weeks ago or something like that, but both kind of encompass recently. Next example, Congress passing this anti-crime bill in the fall, it says. Oh, okay. So, again, not the most, recent time peg. Well, the one that gets the biggest, arrow is Congress unveils anti-crime bill on National Safety Day here at the bottom. And with that one, we'll give another arrow there. Wonderful. This one maybe is a little bit bigger because hopefully it is recent. National Safety Day was yesterday, perhaps. Hopefully we're not reporting on this too late in the game, but obviously that played a role in the timing of that legislation being passed, and maybe you wouldn't mention that, otherwise. Maybe it's not a story if they don't pass it on National Safety Day. I don't know, but anyway, in this case, it makes a difference. Okay, proximity. What does this mean? Well, hey, it happened near us, within our proclaimed coverage area. So no matter where you work, there's going to be some sort of delineated coverage area. And what I mean is, who are your readers? If you work, for example, for the Flyer, your readers are the campus community. Maybe a little bit into the greater Salisbury, greater Delmarva area, but primarily you're writing for that audience. So you're going to highlight campus events, sports, SU sports, that sort of thing, as opposed to, let's say, what's happening in Mongolia or what's happening in Georgia, or even what's happening in Chincoteague or Ocean City. Probably not going to get highlighted. Very good play anyway, as we might say. It's not going to make the front page, that kind of thing, or it may not be written about at all because it has little or nothing to do with the campus community. If you work at let's say, the Washington Post or New York Times or USA Today or some, publication, Free Sports Guys, Deadspin, we'll consider them, sure. They're journalism, why not? Some publication with a national footing, you may not focus so much on, if you're writing about a soccer team or something, it may not focus on its impact to the surrounding community. You may want to focus on, okay, well, why does someone in Peoria care about this, or someone in Miami care? You're writing for a national audience, so even there, you've set, drawn a big circle and said, okay, I'm writing about America here, American readers. What do they care about? Maybe then you're not writing about, rugby games in the United Kingdom so much, or writing about, but even, there's international news there as well, but international news is often consigned to its own section, deep inside the paper, in a lot of places. But, Times and the Post do see themselves as global papers, so they often have international on the front. But even then, you'll see international stories written in such a way that has a local or at least national perspective on it, and we'll see how. But let's first start and look at this one here. You know, proximity, writing about Safe Ride, okay? Obviously, you guys are going to care at SU. I'm definitely not going to read this or care about this in the Baltimore Sun, really, or something like that, unless it's written in such a way that would appeal, but probably only going to be of interest to the flyer. So let's take a look at it. Yeah, so as I was saying, even if you are writing about a global occurrence of some kind or a national thing, and you can and you should, you need to tilt that toward your audience. So, okay, how do we do that? Earthquake, hurricane, keep insurance agents busy. So, you know, that's a way that, you know, I think another, and maybe even a better example, like Hurricane Maria, when that hit Puerto Rico last year. You know, yeah, there were stories in the paper about that, obviously, but if a story was being written by, you know, a Daily Times writer, let's say, they were probably writing about local people who were maybe had family members affected by it. You know, had they been able to reach them? How was it affecting them? What were local relief agencies doing to help out? Were they, you know, were people planning to volunteer? That's how you put a local, one way anyway, you put a local spin on a national story like that. Again, because it's driven by that news value proximity. In this case, like you guys don't care about Collier students, you know, Collier County, Florida students improving on their ACT scores. But guess what? People who live in Collier County do. So that news value is going to be, you know, featured prominently, hey, in the headline of that, you know, particular publication's website. So which one of these best illustrates proximity? All right. Well, let's look at the first couple and why maybe not so much. Students in the U.S. rank third in reading compared to other countries. Okay, I mean that's kind of national, but that's drawing. I mean, maybe you care about how kids in America do, and you should, but that's not the strongest. Students in Maryland ranking third. Okay, that's not my house. That's, oh wait, students in Salisbury ranked third in reading in the state of Maryland. Okay, now we're cooking with gas. So, ranking third in Maryland. Students in Salisbury ranked third in reading in the U.S. Yeah, I mean, it's still there. So, I don't know. I think these are really, C and D are really equal in terms of proximity. I mean, they both have to do with proximity. So, with the proximity being Salisbury anyway. So yeah, that's what's gonna rise to the top. You know, when you can focus on your local area, and you know, as a little exercise, you know, go on WBOC's website or go on BaltimoreSun.com or DelmarvaNow.com for the Daily Times, and just scan the headlines. You're gonna see, you know, geographic points of interest in all of them. You know, or virtually all of them, at least the ones that are locally produced. You know, Dundalk something, or Havre de Grace, or you know, back over here on the Eastern Shore, Ocean City something or other. Because you know that's, hey, that's happening down the street from me. I mean, that's an innate thing people care about. Prominence. That's a fun one. It's when we're talking about, you know, well-known people being in the news. So that example there, Jennifer Cox gets a dog. Do you care? No. I mean, who's Jennifer Cox? I mean, my wife, but, you know, I care. But it's a very small circle of people who care about that, right? But wait a minute. Okay, same story, different people. Prominence rearing its head. Obama's to adopt a rescue dog. Michelle Obama announces. That is news now. Left side, not news. Right side, news. Only difference, prominence. So look at a couple other things. Well-known organizations can also kind of take on that road, so that role rather. So local Habitat for Humanity group builds 20 homes. Ah, good for them. Extreme Makeover Home Edition to build in Sussex. Ah, okay, I've heard of that show. That's a national. Oh, they're coming here to our backyard here in Delaware. Cool. All right, I'm going to be a little bit more interested in that one than the local Habitat of Humanity. Why? Again, prominence. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. Salisbury man was charged with sexual assault of 10 minors. Okay. The Salisbury police chief was charged with sexual assault of a coworker. Now, we're just looking at prominence here. So if we were looking, okay, well, let's first take a look at the prominence actually. Which one's number one? Okay, boom. Salisbury police chief is a known entity. Uh, you know, it's a kind of locally, I wouldn't say famous person, but it's a prominent person. You know, it's someone who's got an important role in the community with a lot of responsibility, and you know, it's going to be more prominent than a random guy um, that we have in our first example there. Now, remember, harken back now to one of our earlier um, news values there uh, with impact. Now, the question here was not which one has a bigger impact. I think if that's the question, certainly if you're assaulting 10 minors, that's horrific. Um, that's 10 people. I mean, that's seems like it's a bigger impact perhaps than, you know, a single coworker. I mean, that again, I know that sounds kind of harsh to say, but I mean, just looking at the numbers here, 10 is greater than 1. I think we can all agree um, that there's greater impact with the first one. Now, which one is a bigger story overall? That's hard to say. But if we're just narrowing it down to, you know, prominence, certainly B is the better, is the greater example of that. And again, when you're writing your story and you're ordering your information, uh, you know, that's something that you're going to consider. You know, so perhaps you could start it hypothetically with, you know, a Salisbury man was charged with sexual assault of a coworker, and then, you know, 3 paragraphs down mention that person was the police chief who, you know, was arrested. That we would call that burying the lead. The lead, if you haven't heard that term before, is it means the first sentence or the most important part of your news, hard news usually, story. And oh, you buried it. You put it way down low that that person who was arrested was the police chief. So that's why it's important to kind of have an idea of what your news values are and be able to make these decisions about, you know, what should be up high, so I'm not burying the lead. Okay. All right. Oddity is a news value, and it refers to odd or unusual news. Right. Okay, that's pretty obvious. Uh, and you often see it without other values. So the classic example is dog bites man. All right, I mean that's not really that odd. I mean that's what dogs kind of do. Man bites dog. Oh, okay. Now we're talking about something. That's journalism. That's the essence of journalism, at least, you know, classically speaking. Man bites dog. You have a lot of questions, right? That's weird, and that's oddity for you. Yep. So here's a couple examples. Again, probably not stories at all, but for the fact that, you know, there's some odd aspect. So, updated. Man's sight saved after shears impale eye. Ouch. That, that is gross. And yet I cannot look away. Second one, watch. This guy makes art in his sleep. Whoa, that's crazy, man. I want to share that. Again, random guy, who cares? Doesn't have any, you know, I don't see any proximity there. Doesn't say Salisbury or Ocean City guy or Baltimore. No idea. This guy could be in Thailand. I have no idea. So obviously proximity's out. maybe he makes his art now. There is no timeliness here, uh, to at least in the headline. Really, the only thing that's keeping it afloat from a news value perspective is Oddity, and Oddity can do that. It's sort of the magical news value in that respect. Very rarely do you see timeliness just hanging out on its own. You the light just turned green outside your house. Oh, who cares? But add some other details to it, and you've got a story. But Oddity is sort of a different one, different animal. So which one of these best illustrates Oddity? Well, I clicked on it, so you see there the last one. Man holds up liquor store dressed as Mickey Mouse. That's weird. The other ones, they're a bit weird. Okay, usually you would expect perhaps to be holding up a liquor store with a gun or a knife or finger jammed into a coat pocket at the very least. But dressed up as Mickey Mouse, that's kind of out there for an oddity. Another news value is conflict. Conflict is, another one that's kind of at the essence of journalism, right? We have a two-party system, right? Democrats versus Republicans. If you're a sports guy, you've got, the New York Football Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. Conflict. Um, Farmers versus environmentalists, and on and on and on. It's a disagreement between two or more parties. He said, she said. So it's important for us when we have legitimate conflict to, give both sides an airing that is, commensurate with their, um, how much that they have to say, really. So here's some examples of headlines. Very, classic stuff. Oh, there's John McCain on the left there, R.I.P. Heads exploding. Cheney has harsh words for McCain. Obviously, that's an old one. Rawlings, Blake, and Dixon trade shots. Football game. Dolphins Jet rivalry ramps up some more. So, those obviously you can tell from the headlines that the news value that is most featured is conflict. So let's take a look at a couple of these. Which one has the most conflict anyway? Fight broke out at a bar. Members of city council who voted against funding for a new school faced protests from parents Thursday. Republicans slammed their proposal. Well, at least from what we can see here, where you have A against B, one, force going up against another, parents versus city council. There you go. Fight breaking out of the bar. I mean, obviously there's probably some conflict there, but it's not featured in the lead anyway. It's not, two guys who are fans of rival teams or something being the focus. I'm not saying there's no conflict there, but it's not featured. And the same thing with this Republican one. I mean, it could be Republicans versus Democrats or something or whatever, but it's not what's focused on. All right, human interest, the softer side of the news. Literally like soft focus. Average people doing interesting things often is human interest. And often these will kind of, these are kind of more stories with a, beginning and a middle and an end. So, they can be something that inspires you or some sort of tragedy, people overcoming things, um, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, again, or extraordinary people doing ordinary things, as in our example of the Obamas getting a dog. Yes, there is the prominence there, but also, human interest. So here we have our examples. Here's a model citizen, a profile of someone doing, nice things, for impoverished people, I suppose, and And then here's an example of on the right-hand side of a first-person column. A little bit of if there's really anything there that is a quote-unquote news value, uh, it's probably the human interest side of it. And we've seen all these. We've seen them on, especially the local news, do-gooders type segments and that sort of thing. So, kind of speaks for itself. It is news, and I don't want to, bash it. It's definitely has its place in the news ecosystem there. And these tend to be often widely read. I mean, and I'm not saying they're always good news or happy news, but they often are. And people say they like that thing. They may not necessarily read it, but they say they like it. Which one of these best illustrates human interest? Well, local woman helps dogs get adopted from kill shelters. So, what's her story? Why does she do it? How does she do it? And how can others help out? That's what it's down to. And extraordinary people doing ordinary things. Paris Hilton recovers her lost dog. I mean, yeah, okay. There's definitely a human interest element. Really, A and B both can be said to have human interest, but really their prominence is the larger news value there. So that's why that one doesn't get the arrow. Study says dogs can communicate with each other. Good for them, by the way. But human interest, not so much. It's really more of kind of typical science story. What news value would that be, really? I mean, there's a little human interest, but perhaps impact, talking about dogs. What else? Yeah, there's probably others, but not a lot jumping out to me right now. News value, helpfulness. I think this is the last one. And, I've gone way past the 20 minutes. I'm awful. Sorry about that. But this will go faster than a regular class. It's news you can use. It's how-to. It's advice. So, 11 ways to manage nicotine withdrawal. Top 10 healthiest colleges. So, how to, lose weight or something like that. It's probably the kind of more on the feature page, kind of on the outskirts of news, but it has its place. And which one best illustrates helpfulness? How to train your dog. Profile, how I overcame addiction, probably has elements of it. Probably more of a human interest story. 10 best celebrity haircuts, certainly prominence there is number one. So, okay, let's take a look at an example here. And as I said, the news values, there's usually going to be more than one in a story, and often more than one in a given sentence, especially in your lead, where you're trying to say, okay, these are things I think are important because, you may not have a lot of time in your day, and if all you, get is this first sentence, that should provide you with enough, okay? So, you being the reader anyway. So let's read this. Weather pending, President Barack Obama could fly into, I'm just going to say Salisbury Airport on Friday and then take a road trip to Cambridge, a person said. Okay, so let's take these one by one. Impact, maybe. It's going to maybe affect your day. I'll put a little check there. Timeliness, yep, we've got Friday there. Put a check mark there. Proximity, yep, Salisbury. Prominence, Barack Obama. Oddity, no, I wouldn't say so. That sounds pretty rote. Conflict, not seeing that. I mean, it does say weather pending, but I don't know that, we can really shake our fists at the air. Human interest, I'm not seeing that. Not really a personal drama going on. Helpfulness, I'm not really being told how to do, live my life. Let's see how I did here. All right, I got it wrong on impact, I guess. I mean, I think it's there. It's probably a minor thing. It really, yeah, I kind of talked myself into that one because I was trying to think about traffic snarls and that sort of thing. But that to be fair, that is not something that's really addressed here in this lead. So, all right, there we go. I'll exit out. Timeliness, proximity, prominence. So, don't overthink it. That's the message here. Let's take another. Let me try again. Maybe I'll do better this time. Beyonce and Jay-Z have reportedly chosen to make Oprah the godmother of their inevitable planet-ruling daughter, Blue Ivy Carter. Okay. Impact. Okay, I'm not being tricked by that one again. Timeliness. I don't see a day in there, so I'm not going to go that route. Proximity. No, they don't live anywhere near us. Prominence. Yes, obviously. Oddity. No. Conflict, no. Human interest, no, I don't think so. Hopefulness, no. Let me see, how'd I do? Hey, alright, I nailed it. Hopefully you did too. Alright, here we go again. We can do this. Let's do this together. A group of selected mediums and psychics will be spending a March weekend trying to reach Edgar Allan Poe, the literary giant and creator of the modern detective story, who has made Baltimore his permanent home since 1849. That means he's dead and buried there. Okay, impact. No, I'm not being sucked into that again. Timeliness. Yeah, I see the word March, so I'm going to go that route. Proximity. Well, it's Baltimore for a Baltimore audience, as we can see here with the Baltimore Sun, so I'm going to go that way. Prominence. Okay, we got Edgar Allan Poe. He's dead, but I mean, you've probably heard of the guy. Oddity. Why? Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah, I'm gonna go there. Conflict. No. Human interest. Yeah, not really. Helpfulness. No, I don't think so. Let's see how we did. What? What? Timeliness. All right. Fine. Okay, but I think there's an element of it there, but anyway, we did pretty well there, so I'm still gonna give myself a nice star. Good job, Jeremy. All right, you get one too. Here you go. Oh, there we go. All right. All right, so yeah, this basically answers who cares. That's why we have news values. You're wondering, well, how is this a story? Just look back at your list of news values. Um, and they'll explain to you why, this was a story, and generally, you can go through and look at, okay, well, what news values are in the lead? What's in the second? What's in the third sentence? What's in the fourth sentence? And then you'll see the order, at least what that writer thought was the order of importance there, because we haven't talked about it yet, but generally you order things, and especially hard news stories, um, in order of decreasing importance. So if it's in the lead, that's something, or certainly in the first couple words, that's something where you go, well, that must be what the writer thinks is the most important thing. If maybe it's not something that's mentioned until the fourth or fifth sentence, then, not so much. And, always be thinking, you don't want to be pandering to your audience, to your readers, whoever it is. So, you got to think about, am I writing this simply because I think I'm going to get a lot of clicks or something like that? Which news value am I highlighting here? So anyway, obviously we can't get into little groups here, but maybe, on your own, go ahead and visit when you're done watching this, or pause it perhaps. Visit a news site. You can pick whatever you want. Go to, yeah, and really any, even TV. Go to CNN or New York Times or Baltimore Sun or, whatever you're into. ESPN.com, I guess. Yeah, why not? USA Today, whatever. Okay. So find examples that illustrate each of the news values we have discussed. So kind of go through. Really, you can just do this by scanning headlines. You don't have to even click through. and just kind of, look at it and go, okay, well, what news values are in each one, just like we did, in my uh, guessing game there at the end. And you see for yourself, and I guarantee you every single one of them, no matter what you're looking at, you're going to be able to name at least one, if not more than one news value just based on the headline alone, or you should. And if you can't, that's on them. They're not doing their job. I mean, sports is kind of easy because prominence is going to be in just about every one, and conflict is going to be probably in half of them or more, because that's sports is kind of life distilled down into those basic parts. That's why we love them. We love following it. We love reading about it. Um, there are winners and losers. I mean, if only real life were that simple. So anyway, take a look at it. If you are watching this with a classmate, hey, talk about it. That's always helpful. So okay, homework for Tuesday. Go ahead and print out before class. Okay, I'm gonna highlight this here. Before or prior to class. Okay. Print out a story from a newspaper or online only news publication. Okay, so let's try to find it can be Politico, or if it's something in the sports world, try to go to the Baltimore Sun or the Athletic or something like that that kind of covers news or something of that nature in the sports world, and print it out, bring it in class, and be prepared to critique it then on Tuesday. I think there's one more. Yeah, okay. So also read chapter 2. So you should have read chapter 1 and chapter 2 in your book. Chapter 2 is gonna be one of those rare cases where this lecture kind of matches up with it, and that just speaks to the fact that this is very much basic ingredients of journalism and what we're going to be doing going forward. So you need to know this stuff pretty inside and out. It's fun foundational stuff. So oh, I deleted that. This is all old information down here, so don't look at this. Sorry about that. I deleted it. It didn't save for some reason. So that's, anyway, disregard that. But do continue looking out for, any extra credit opportunities to go to meetings, SPJ or SUTV or something like that. And, don't forget to bring your paper for your handout under the handouts tab on our class website. Print it out, take it ahead of time, get the organizer to sign it and bring it back in. So again, for Tuesday, print out a story for us for you to critique in class work, and then read chapters 1 and 2. All right. Thanks very much.